Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I thought it'd be interesting to talk about a really unusual topic today, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about money and gaming. And you can hear the lovebirds out there. I didn't close the door. We got these lovebirds that my girlfriend's boss wanted to get rid of, so they're a little noisy. So that's what you're hearing in the videos lately. Anyhow, want to talk a little bit about money, and I'm sure you've noticed by now that my channel is monetized. And also, maybe you've heard me talk about looking for a job. I think I might have mentioned that in a couple of my videos. I'm like in between jobs this exact moment. I'm okay, I've been doing some work and whatnot. But anyhow, I'm looking, so I'm going to drink some Diet A&W here. See, I still have money to buy that. But anyhow, yeah, it got me thinking. I was quipping to a friend of mine about something about all I need to do is increase my subscriber base, like just multiply it by 1,000, and then I won't have to work ever again. It'll be great. And he was talking about back to me about some people he knows that have some relatively large subscriber bases. They showed him part of like what their income was, and he was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And I said, "No, that sounds about right. Given the numbers and what have you." So I just want to talk about that a little bit and give my thoughts on some other related topics if you care to hear them. But because some people have already talked about this recently. So anyhow, just in case you're wondering, like I had this history with my channel where I put this video up. It was a response video to Tetsubo 57. I put it back up in I think January of 2011. That was my first YouTube video ever. It got a lot of hits, and all of a sudden I was allowed to monetize my videos and all this other stuff. And at the time I was broke, like super broke. So I said, what the heck? Of course I'll do whatever. I'll sell my soul to the devil. So I did that. And let me tell you, monetizing your videos does not make a ton of money, just in case you're wondering, unless you have a lot of views. And so I don't think I actually saw the first check from that for years. It wasn't actually until I started making videos again that I actually got anything. And pretty much, if you care to know, like how that works is, Google has this thing called AdSense, and every time you can set it to every time you get at least $100 in revenue, they will send it to you. They'll deposit it into your account or whatever. So that's how I have it set up. So I've been paid twice so far. So I've made a little over $200 off this channel. It comes a lot faster now. This next year, I think I got $100 in a little less than a year. So amazing, huh? And now you look at my subscriber base right now. I've got like something like 750 odd subscribers. Had quite an increase in over the last 2 years or whatever, which is because I've been making content. But I've been making a lot of content. Anyhow, so all I need to do is have something more along the line of say like 100,000 subscribers. Maybe 75,000 subscribers. I'll be set. I'll be making a pretty good income at that point. And this is a niche hobby to begin with. Let's face it, kids. Tabletop role-playing games. As big as the big boys like Dungeons and Dragons are and Pathfinder is. A couple other things which come up very distant third, I believe, in market share. I haven't actually sat down and looked at the numbers, but just based on what I've seen, this is not a hobby where people are getting rich. It's a small group, and as small as gaming is, and video gaming is pretty big now. Small as but it's smaller compared to other things. And this is just a little teeny sliver, of the population that actually play tabletop role-playing games. And some of them haven't bought a freaking thing in years. I mean, just look at my collection until recently. Some of us old guys. So it's a niche hobby. And then this is like a niche channel in a niche hobby. I'm not going to name the other channels that my friend was. He knows the people that were that host these channels, but they are channels that focus like primarily on things like 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. That's what's hot. They get a lot of views. They get a lot of subscribers. And so you can do the math and figure out how much money they might be making just on ad revenue. And then they have Patreon accounts. And I'm thinking, I remember like Patreon came up and I'm thinking, wow, I should set up a Patreon account. What would I have people pay me for? What the except I'm poor, give me money. Right now I'm doing okay, but you know what I mean. And then so we got into that as we were having this discussion. Actually, the guy I was talking to about all this was Jason, Dark Age of Roleplay Games, and we were having this discussion yesterday. I think we're quipping back and forth. And I've had this discussion before with some other people, and I even mentioned it to some other folks. I think I mentioned it to Runeslinger and maybe a couple other people. Can you imagine now if you're going to be a game master for hire? That's where I was going with this, in case I didn't mention that yet. Which was quite a controversy a little while ago. If you're going to be a game master for hire, can you imagine the pressure? Can you imagine like having to be on your A game like all the time? And it's a very different style of gaming than I normally do. And when I first heard about game mastering for money, I was really taken aback. Like, the gut level reaction was like, "How dare they? This is a hobby, blah blah blah." The usual. And I've learned over time, as I've grown older and hopefully wiser, that sometimes what I need to do is sit on my gut level reaction for a few days and consider all the sides. And it's funny, JDRD30 actually made a video, and it reminded me. I can't believe I didn't think of this. But you look right behind me. You look right there. Okay. I've been playing bass guitar professionally for a long time. Not a virtuoso, but it's been at the point for a long time that I don't go out and take my as one of my friends used to say. I'm not this cold-hearted. He says I don't open my guitar case for less than $100. But when I play, it's for money. And it's a hobby. I like to do it. It's paid for itself for the most part because the equipment is not cheap. But it's and I haven't made a living doing it, but it can be a nice supplemental income every once in a while. The recording session wasn't bad, but that's once again that's something that's enjoyable to people, but they I actually get paid to do it. It's a little bit different in the role-playing game hobby because it's a little bit more participatory. If you're an audience member in a establishment where a band is playing, that's one thing, but it's not terribly interactive. It's a little interactive, because nobody likes to play for an audience that's just sitting there, stone-faced. But here the people are participating. But as I was thinking about this, and the what it would be like, doing that thought experiment in my head of being a game master for hire on a regular basis, it struck me just how much of a stretch it might be for somebody like me. Now, talking to, I think Francois actually has a video up, and hopefully I will be intelligent enough to link it. I don't have enough time to do it right now as I'm going to put this thing up, but hopefully I'll go back and link it. Francois actually made a great video about that whole subject and the fact that he is works for a library, so he's had people literally he's been paid by the town to go run some games, and he's done some freelance work when people that have asked him to go run a game. And I can see that happening as well. I know a few people that have done that sort of thing, especially if it's like an introductory thing, or if a game store is saying, "Hey, we want to introduce people to this whatever game it is," etc. Because there is actually a huge market of people that want to play that don't have a game master. Now, a lot of that is in the the really popular games, but even the game store down the street, the guy Bobby's World. I think I brought in some stuff, some World of Darkness books I bought from Bobby's World, all excited, a few months ago. Great guy, little teeny shop, and he said one of the things, as I was talking about, like, hey, maybe wanting to make a game group over there, and he's got this night and that night free or whatever. He said the biggest thing is people come to him and want somebody to run games. Now, of course, a lot of it is for something like 5th edition D&D, but there is a demand for game masters. Okay, so. Interesting. I don't think there's a demand for game masters for Broken Rooms. I wish there was. I mean, or for Hollow Earth Expedition, or all the things I'd like to be running right now. But I digressed an awful lot, didn't I, kids? But getting back to this, part of the thing that has struck me about game mastering for hire. Yeah, I could do what I just talked about, maybe like a little small group, and just introduce you to whatever the game is, and take you through that. But where people are paying for a seat at your table, you're going to have to bring it like every single session, every single time, flawlessly. I don't know that you have to be more awesome than the last time that you've done it, but it's a very different game feel or gameplay state than the one that I gravitate towards. The one that I tend to gravitate towards is a much more collaborative experience where it's not totally free form, but as the game master, if I'm going to be the game master, I set up the world, I set up the what's happening, maybe like the opening scenarios, some ideas of what's going on in the world, but then the players are very dynamic players in that world, and they kind of drive the bus. I sort of follow their lead in terms of what they are interested in. Other things still keep happening in the world. I've talked about my game style ad nauseum, but you get that idea. It's a very much a collaborative effort. If people aren't bringing it to the table, if they're just sitting there like bumps on a log, waiting for me to entertain them, that's not the kind of game style that I particularly like. But if people are paying for a seat at your table, it seems to me, and I could be very wrong, that to a certain extent, that's kind of what you have to prepare yourself for. Is they may be very proactive and very interactive, but they're going to want to be entertained. They're going to want you to constantly bring the mountain to Muhammad, because Muhammad's not necessarily going to go to the mountain, if you know what I mean. And I don't know that I could do that on a regular basis. There is the whole, creative part and the man, I hope I don't get writer's block and constantly having to produce content, although I produce content here, but you know what I mean, constantly, having to come up with stuff you can't miss. These people are paying. It's not like your regular game group with a bunch of friends. It's like, yeah, I understand you had a rough week, Ivan. No, these people are paying money to be there, and that's one thing. But then the constant default setting, I imagine, and I could be wrong, but that you're going to be the entertainment. If they're not bringing it, you better bring it every single time, regardless of whether or not they are. I don't know if I could do that. So, in a roundabout way, my hat's off a little bit to the people that do it professionally. Does it still leave a little bit of a, I still have a little bit of a gut level reaction to it. But, I can understand that's a job at that point. It can be fun, but, anytime you make your passion your job, you do run the risk of tainting it a little bit. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but there have definitely been nights when, I don't want to go and play. I'd rather stay home. I'd rather sleep. I don't want to play that song ever again. I'm not really fond with playing with this band or these songs, but they pay really good. That can happen. So the same thing, I suppose, can happen in gaming when you're doing it for money. So that's just kind of my take on it. But who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, I'll have a zillion subscribers. I don't think so, because this is a niche hobby, a niche channel. I mean, I'm talking about OSR and some other esoteric games, right? So I'm just a little teeny sliver. But maybe I'll have this big giant viewership, and I'll have some kind of Patreon account. You'll pay me because I'm so smart, and I'll be running games for money too. Well, we'll see what happens. Just stay tuned.